Today's episode is brought to you by Musical Theater Radio's merch store. Looking for that perfect gift for someone or just want to treat yourself to some great musical theater themed merch? Head to musicaltheaterradio.com and click on the All Things Theater button on the homepage and check out all the different designs available. And now, today's interview. Welcome back to another episode of Be Our Guest here on Musical Theater Radio. I am your host, as always, Jean-Paul Jovanov. Today is another Discover a New Musical edition where you, the listener, and me, the host, get to learn about a new show together. In The Sabbath Girl, Angie Mastroianni has a lot going for her. Her own art gallery, a new apartment, but not much time for romance. Until a neighbor unexpectedly knocks on her door. This sparkling new musical is about big city life and the possibility of finding love when you're least looking for it. Maybe even right down the hall. Today, to tell us a little bit about the show and the new original Off-Broadway cast recording is Neil Berg and Cary Gitter. Neil, Cary, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jean-Paul. Great to be here.
Thank you so much, Jean-Paul. Great to be back.
Yeah, it's great to have you back, Neil, and I'm going to get to know more about you, Cary. So I always ask for a 30-second bio. So, because Neil, you've done this before, I'm going to let you go first so Cary can hear you. Who's Neil in 30 seconds?
I've been a composer and a lyricist for many, many years in the Broadway theater world. I had the privilege of having many shows produced, including for Warner Brothers, Grumpy Old Men, the musical that's playing all over the country in the United States and started in actually in Canada. Obviously, The Sabbath Girl was just off Broadway. New musical with Cary called How My Grandparents Fell in Love, which is coming out July 15th at the New Jersey Rep. I was the composer of The Prince and the Pauper at the Lambs Theater in New York City, and I just had a big splash with my musical The 12 that I wrote with Pulitzer Prize winner Robert Schenkkan at the Goodspeed Opera House, directed by Tony Award winner John Doyle. And we're waiting for that to come to Broadway. And probably the biggest one coming up after that is I am the composer for the Broadway-bound musical of the musical version of the famous hit comedy, My Cousin Vinny.
Nice. Now, Neil is a busy guy. He's in his car. He froze for a second. He'll be back for sure. But while we're getting him back on, Cary, let's learn more about you. Who's Cary in 30 seconds?
Well, I'm primarily a playwright. I'm the playwright in residence at Penguin Repertory Theatre, which is a regional theater in Stony Point, New York, where the Sabbath Girl musical originated. And only more recently have I begun writing musicals, The Sabbath Girl with Neil. And as Neil mentioned, we have another show coming up at New Jersey Repertory Company next year, How My Grandparents Fell in Love. Currently, my play Gene and Gilda about Gene Wilder and Gilda Radner is running at the George Street Playhouse in New Brunswick, New Jersey. And my debut novel is coming out next year. It's called Cami Sitting Shiva, and it's due out in August from Alcove Press. So I'm branching into fiction writing as well.
You are a busy man as well.
Yes.
For what you're doing. And Neil, just as a side note, before, and I forgot to mention the last time we talked, I found Prince and the Pauper in New York, the CD, and I didn't realize it. And I played on the station, a demo recording or something to that effect.
Yeah, there was a demo recording somehow got out there, but there's an actual fantastic official off-Broadway cast recording on J Records, which is out there. And I'm excited because I've been talking about my collaborators, and it seems next year we're going to be doing a big kind of anniversary concert version in New York to try and reinvigorate that show because we got a great review in the New York Times with Prince and the Pauper. It should really be done and seen more. So we're hoping to get that going too.
I look forward to hearing more about that when that's about to happen. So
yeah.
My question now is, how did the two parallel lines of Neil and Cary intersect? Cary, why don't you let us know?
Sure. As I mentioned, I'm the playwright in residence at Penguin Rep Theater, and Penguin Rep had done a play version of The Sabbath Girl in 2019, which then moved off Broadway in early 2020 and closed right before COVID. Um, and the director of that production, who runs Penguin Rep, Joe Brancato, he's known Neil for years. Neil lives up in Rockland County near the theater, and I think, they've been friends talking about working together. And Neil had actually, I believe, composed the music for a young people's show years ago at Penguin. So it was the middle of COVID and early 2022, and Joe had always thought that The Sabbath Girl might make a good musical. So he said, "Hey, do you mind if I send the play to Neil Berg? He's a great composer in the area, and see what he thinks." And so he sent the play to Neil, and then we had a Zoom meeting in, I think, January of 22. And Neil really responded to the material. We hit it off as collaborators, and that's how it began. So it was really Joe Brancato, our director, who paired us together and thought that we might make a good team, which it turned out we did.
Very nice. Neil, did you know anything about the story beforehand, or was it new?
No, which actually I thought was kind of cool. I obviously I've known Joe Brancato for a long time, and I had heard of Cary, but I did not get to see the play version of Sabbath Girl. So when it was sent to me, when Joe called me, immediately it piqued my interest on so many levels. A, working with Joe. B, the Penguin Rep is the closest professional regional theater to where I live outside of New York City. And but it was easily, the deal was sealed easily as soon as I read it. I realized how wonderful and smart, what a great writer Cary is. And so it was really a simple decision, really, and very fortuitous, because there's no doubt, a collaboration is a marriage. It's a marriage. And this is one of those great ones. Cary and I have since gone on to write this new musical. We just finished writing a song that's going to be debuting at Studio 54, a Hanukkah song on December 17th. So, I feel like I found a new marriage partner.
Nice. So Cary, I'm going to ask you, tell us the plot. I gave obviously a brief synopsis, but tell us a little bit more about the show.
Yeah, so The Sabbath Girl is a contemporary romantic comedy set in New York City. And it's about a young Italian-American woman, Angie Mastrantoni, who has come from Jersey. Her dream's always been to be in the art world, and she has a small, struggling art gallery on the Lower East Side that she's trying to keep afloat. She's supported by her grandmother, her nonna, who's played a big role in her life. And then she moves into a new building and meets her down the hall neighbor, Seth, who's an Orthodox Jewish guy who's divorced and runs a knish shop on the Lower East Side. And their meet cute is that Seth, as an Orthodox Jew, is forbidden to do certain things on the Sabbath, and it's a Friday night, and his air conditioning isn't on, and it's sweltering, and he needs someone to help him out and turn it on for him. So that's how they meet. The other characters are Seth's sister, Rachel, who's an Orthodox Jewish woman who runs the knish store with him. And then there's Blake, who's a young kind of hotshot artist that Angie's trying to court for her gallery. And yeah, basically it's a tale of like an unlikely relationship blossoming between these two people from different worlds, the classic kind of cultural clash, and figuring out how they can try to make that work and bridge the gulf between them. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll just like to chime in. I hear there's a new series on one of HBO or whatnot, and people have been calling me saying, "Oh my gosh, this is kind of similar to the Sabbath Girl." I said, "Well, we were a long time before this series, so we have to actually look into that."
Oh yeah,
I forget what it's called.
That's Nobody Wants This on Netflix, which was a big hit this fall. Is like a Jewish, non-Jewish rom-com that's just coincidentally arisen, in the wake of our show. But everything's in development for years, so you never know who thought of it first,
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So tell us.
Oh, and we forgot one. I'm sorry, we forgot one character, which I'd like to talk about. The Nona, Cary.
Oh yeah.
Did you mention her?
Yes, yeah. And she's kind of like Angie's guiding light, guardian angel, who's helped her get the gallery off the ground and kind of gives her life advice. And she's like a kind of Brooklyn Italian, straight shooting,
Grandmother.
yeah, just a real warm, loving grandmother figure.
I'm curious about the writing process with the two of you. How does it work? Does the ideas flow back and forth, or just tell us a little bit about your working relationship?
So, so I've been doing this a long time. I mean, I teach, I have taught courses in writing musicals. And when you have somebody brilliant like Cary, I just want to write with brilliant writers. When I was handed the script, usually the script comes first, right? And then what you do is you cannibalize the script to find the heightened emotions and you make those musical moments. That's how it works. So when I was first approached by Joe Brancato, he asked if I would be the composer lyricist. And so I went to work on the first two songs, actually, and found kind of what I thought would be the voice of the project, the voice of these characters, and started taking Cary's scenes and turning them into song. And it became very quick. And usually when you're working with a collaborator, it really is back and forth. We would have weekly meetings, but usually Cary and I would have some sort of, before we met, the three of us on a Zoom call, I would call him or meet with him and we throw things back and forth. So it became very apparent to me that I was dealing with somebody who was very musical, and Cary also had a great gift for words. And I said, Cary, you should become the co-lyricist of this piece with me. And and of course, it was the right move because Cary is a gifted lyricist. So that was part of the wonderful surprise, I suppose you should say. But it worked out fantastic. So that's how it would work. We would meet once a week with the three of us, director, myself and Cary, and tackling another scene, which we would turn into a song. And very quickly, what would happen is then all of a sudden, Cary would come back with a lyric, fully formed from the scene, and he would do the work that I started to do early in the process. And there's a wonderful collaboration, back and forth, and then all of a sudden you have a musical. Cary, you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was really exciting because I grew up on musicals. That was the first theater I was exposed to, but I had never written one. And so Neil was very instrumental in sort of being my guide to the form of musical writing and the considerations that go into structuring a musical and the sort of conventions and tropes that are sort of consistent through all musical writing. So yeah, as Neil said, we had a really fluid collaboration and yeah, it was just a give and take. I might write a lyric and then Neil and I would workshop the lyric and then Neil would write music and it was just really a very seamless back and forth. And then ultimately when it came time to really put the show together, Neil brought in a close friend of his, Wendy Bobbitt Cavett, musical supervisor, who's done tons of stuff on Broadway. She come from away, etc. And she was really critical also in helping us shape the music into the scenes and really flesh out the whole musical life of the show. So she really became like a critical fourth collaborator for us in addition to Joe.
And I'd like to add a specific thing just so your listeners can hear this, because I know people like specifics. I got the script and I literally looked at the first scene. It was the grandmother telling her granddaughter about how she should find somebody in her life, that you need a dance. It's like a dance partner. Mm-hmm. And I will honestly say I wrote that first song based on the screen and the scene called Someone to Dance With. And I wrote that maybe in 20 minutes. It was so effortless based on the material. And I was like, oh oh my gosh, we have this great song. Everyone loved it. Beautiful. And then there was another song in the middle of the show. She was talking about Roseland and how she met her love of her life going out dancing in Roseland. And that turned into a phenomenal song called Roseland. And as what happens during these processes, we realized that this great first song we wrote became a little redundant. And so, goodbye song. You know, we lost the very first song we wrote for it, but it really, that first song led the way to the whole path and the whole kind of voice of what we were doing. So those are the types of things that happen on this process.
Yeah, and no work's ever wasted. You know, even if a song is cut or a scene is cut or something is thrown out, it all gets you to the place where you need to go eventually. So it's never a waste. That's what I've found.
It's so interesting that how many brilliant songs are just lost to time because they just didn't fit. And there's got to be tens of thousands of incredible music that we just don't get to hear because, you know, there's something that better.
Yeah, well, you can't be precious. I found that most young writers are precious. They write something, they don't want to lose it, they'll force it in. And that's the hardest thing about young writers. They don't want to let go. They'll force something in because it's a great song. And the only thing that matters is the storytelling, period. End of story. And so you don't want to force something in, even if it's a great song, if it's not going to best serve the story. And the grandmother, who was a great character in our show, we just decided we wanted to, the first song should go to the, you know, protagonist, the granddaughter, and then we kind of were able to get the grandmother into that song to introduce her character, and it just was, it ended up being the right way to do it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Tell us about the production history of, you know, when did you start writing it, how it went, and then I guess culminating in that off-Broadway run. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so we started writing it in January of 22. Then we had a kind of just very rough first read of it in, I believe it was February of 23, so about a year later. And that was just like a first table read. Actors came in cold. We had a few friends listening just to give us a sense of what we had. Then I believe it was January of this year that we did a full week-long 29-hour workshop and presented the show. And that's when I think I can speak for Neil when I say that's when we knew we really had something. By the end of that week in January, we saw that the show clicked into place. And then very quickly, it premiered at Penguin in May of this year, and then went straight from there to Off-Broadway at 59th East 59th theaters in July through September. So it was kind of like 2 long years of, I mean, for a musical, that's not long, but, you know, for a playwright, that was new to me. But yeah, 2 years of development, and then suddenly we were off to the races with a workshop, production, and production. It all happened really fast this year.
And I will say that as a person who writes musicals, and usually large musicals, this was by far the quickest process. Yeah. It does not have to take forever when you have like-minded people. We were fortunate to have the artistic director in our conversations as one of the collaborators and I want to always tell young writers, it's great to have goals. I mean, we set up weekly goals, weekly Zoom meetings, and we were able to write the show very quickly, but, you know, with a lot of depth because we did the work. So it does not have to take a long time, but it did help that it was 5 characters, 2 musicians. So it wasn't like Grumpy Old Men or My Cousin Vinny or The 12. You know, those are big musicals, and they just take longer. They're more complicated. This, Wendy Bobbitt Cavett, as Cary mentioned, my genius friend, who's our musical supervisor and arranger, we turned to each other during the process and said, oh my gosh, this is like theater summer camp. This is so fun. It's cuddly and cute, and we were able to get so much done in so little time. It was really like a spectacular process for me. And boom, when Cary and I decided to write our next musical, that took even much quicker. We had shorthand, and that was from scratch. Cary had an idea for how my grandparents fell in love, had written a scene, but then he went away and wrote the script. And how long did it take you to write that full script? Not very long, Cary.
Yeah, just a couple months to write a draft of the book, and then but that's actually a two-hander. That's a two character musical. So even more intimate, and that's going to premiere next July in New Jersey.
Very nice.
Right, and we were able to quickly write the score to that. I mean, we had shorthand already, and probably wrote that score over the summer. And boom, we did a reading of it. It was a big success, and they said, "Okay, we're ready." So there you go.
I'm always curious when you saw the off-Broadway production, was there a moment in the show or a song or something that you just went, they got it, that you didn't expect, that they brought something different to either a scene or a song that that just blew you away? Cary, I'm going to start with you. Was there a moment that you saw just went, wow, they discovered something?
Yeah, there were a few of those. One that comes to mind, at the end of the show, Angie, the protagonist, has a reprise of her I Want song, which is called A Life in Art. And she's kind of accomplished her professional goal of getting a successful show up in her gallery. And we kind of late in the writing process added this reprise for her to convey this sense of fulfillment and achievement that she has, looking at all she's accomplished. And we wrote that, and then we amped it up a little bit to give her an even bigger finish. And then our incredible performer, Marilyn Caserta, just brought so much emotion and power, as well as incredible vocal skill to that moment. Every time I mean, from the first time I saw it to every time I saw the show, she just like ended that show with such a bang, and it was so, and like beyond anything I could have even imagined. So that was always really thrilling to me to see her in that moment, because I could tell it meant something for her. She was bringing her own experience as someone who's made in the theater and seeing her dreams come true, and it was all there, and it was just beautiful.
Neil, same question.
For me, I mean, that's certainly one of them. I probably would have gone to that one, but the other one is Max Wolkowitz, who played Seth. He had never starred in a musical before, but we knew he was perfect for this role. I mean, he had sung, he had done singing before, but had never, and has a brilliant actor, long career, but never got a chance to be the star of a musical. And so I really thought he could do it. There was no doubt in my mind, or Cary's, but there was still some trepidation, maybe in his mind. And there's a really tender love song in the piece called I Am Lost Tonight. It's kind of their first romantic moment. And when I finally saw it done, where he's now out of, is basically in a shirtless sleeve, and it's almost like that scene from Ghost, where, except, the sexuality that you weren't expecting. Maybe you were expecting it with Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore, but here you weren't really expecting it. And Max is kind of, to me, he represents the everyman, the actor, the character of Seth. But to see it explode with this romantic sexuality between these two characters, somebody who, it's not like he's singing to the rafters. It's just when you have a brilliant actor who can sing and worked on it, that moment to me, I was watching it that first time, and ever since, it was one of my highlights to see the audience get sucked in and me sucked in to the romanticism, the authenticity of that moment. That, to me, the authenticity of these characters. And of course, you have brilliant direction and actors doing it. But to me, that was well, I won't say surprise. It was everything I was hoping it could possibly be, and it even exceeded what it was. So yeah, I'll take that. And then there was one other moment in the process. We had not had all the characters singing at the same time. So we really wanted to do that. The director really wanted to have that moment, the moment where everybody's singing in their motifs, and came up with this idea of how to do it. And it really wasn't exactly working. It was almost there. And then very, very late in the process, I had like this is what we need to do. We need to go back and forth and do it this way. And it was a real collaboration. Cary wrote some new lines. I rejiggered how the structure of the song went. Wendy wrote this arrangement, and boom! All of a sudden, we had this thrilling moment where everybody's singing at the same time, kind of like right before the 11 o'clock number, sort of, and it heightened the piece. It gave it an emotional lift and let everybody know what the stakes were and how heightened the stakes were. That to me was something thrilling too and surprising.
Fantastic. Now, so in November of 2024, Centerstage Records released the cast recording of the show. Did you know that this was going to happen beforehand? When did you find out about that?
I had worked with Van Dien and I'm sorry, Cary, you want to go first?
No, go ahead. Yeah, Neil really took the lead on the album production and had a pre-existing relationship with Centerstage. So yeah, why don't you take this one, Neil?
Yeah, I had a great process with the Van Dien and Centerstage Records with Grumpy Old Men, and I called him and said, "Hey, look, we have something special here. We got great reviews, and we were having a great run." And basically, he was like, "Absolutely, let's do this." So it wasn't premeditated beforehand, but once we saw what we had, so during the run, there was no doubt we needed to get a cast recording of this. And once again, what's so helpful is that it's 5 actors, 2 musicians. One of our actors' father happened to own a top recording studio in New York. All the pieces fell into place, and I will say that everybody is so proud of this cast recording, and a lot of what feedback I'm getting from this, besides that people are loving it, it's wonderful, and everybody sounds great, ranges, all that. I'm getting that people are kind of calling it like a modern day The Fantastics. It kind of has that kind of charm and melodic, feel to it. Something that has depth, but yet connects to everybody. So that has made me feel really good, because that's really what I want to do with having always wanted to write a smaller musical, is to write something like this. I love the falsettos, the original one, Bill Finn and the Fantastics, and it's Van Dien. We owe a lot to him and Centerstage Records for releasing the record, and we're thrilled that the world gets to hear this now.
Now, I know, Neil, you've had cast recordings before. You've experienced them. Cary, is this your first cast recording, the experience? And if so, what was that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it is, because this was my first musical, so I feel very lucky that that Neil and Rory, our actor who played Blake, and producer whose father runs the studio, and the whole team rallied together to make this happen. And yeah, for me, it's kind of a dream come true. I mean, I grew up in the car listening to cast album cassettes throughout my entire childhood. And, my father especially was a huge Broadway fan. So I would, flip through the booklets and read the lyrics and the liner notes and be fascinated by the photographs. And yeah, so to have our show, memorialized in this way forever, and have a real beautiful document of it, was such a thrill. Yeah, it's been really exciting, and I hope it's the first of many.
And I'll just add to that. what's really great about this one is that when we went back, and Dean and his staff at Centerstage Records, both Cary and I love old school. I mean, we understand contemporary, modern. We're totally into that. That's what this is. But we want to give it the cast recording an old school feel. So Cary wrote, great liner notes like you would see when we grew up. Jean Paul, you get to the album and read the liner notes where you see the synopsis of the show and then where the song fits into the synopsis. And all the lyrics are posted within the cast recording as well. Even when you stream it, it's part of the packaging. Mm-hmm. And the great news is for all of our audiences that still love a physical piece of cast recording. After the new year, the CD, the physical CD, you'll be able to get that too from Centerstage Records. You'll be able to stream it or buy the CD so you can physically hold it in your hand, look at the lyrics, and see these great photos that are in it. So that makes me very happy too.
I know technically there is no difference whether you get it on the CD, auditorially, right? Whether you download it, but there's something about holding that CD and opening it up and the crack of it, or, pulling it out of the sleeve of a record or whatever. There's just something that's lost, unfortunately. I'm glad that it is coming out on CD so people can, just enjoy that tactile sensation of opening.
Yeah, there's something great to just that tangibility. And I mean, I grew up in the 90s, so that was still very much, at first we mostly had cassettes. So I remember that very vividly myself, and I'm really happy that we're going to have, even if most people don't have CD players anymore, or fewer people do,
yeah,
it's still a great object, a great physical object to have,
Yeah, when I'm looking at my shelf, I can't see my MP3s, but I can see my CDs and my records, and they make me smile.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So congratulations on the show. That's fantastic. I think everyone should take a listen to it, stream it, and then get it on CD next year. But I know you mentioned that you have another show together that's coming up. Maybe we can get a little preview of of what you've got going on in the future to
sure
tantalize the people.
Yeah. I'll start and then I'll hand it over to Cary. The one good thing, just to let people know, is we had this great run of the Sabbath Girl in New York Off-Broadway, 59's 59, and it's still very much alive. I mean, we're working right now. The producers are working to open it again next year for an open-ended commercial run. So hopefully people are coming from anywhere and everywhere. They can look for the Sabbath Girl, and it will be hopefully playing at a great theater in Off-Broadway in New York City. It's not a Broadway show. It's too small, or at least now, now it is. So we're excited about having the chance to for many more people to see the Sabbath Girl in New York before we get it licensed, and then there are productions around the world. People can see it in their communities or license it, those things. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, we have this great musical coming up called How My Grandparents Fell in Love, and I'll let Cary talk about that because it's his grandparents.
Yes, yeah, that's a project that began with a short play I had written a few years back about my paternal grandparents meeting in Poland in the 30s when my grandfather had come back from America. He'd immigrated already. He came back to kind of be set up with a woman who was supposed to maybe be a potential wife, which did not work out. And then he met my grandmother, and they fell in love, and he brought her back to America, and she ended up, surviving the war for that reason. So I'd written this short play, and it was done at a festival down at New Jersey Rep in Long Branch, New Jersey. And the artistic director of the theater, Suzanne Barabbas, commissioned me and Neil to write a full-length, still two-hander musical version of this story. And so that's what this is. It's two characters based on my grandparents, Charlie and Eva. It's set over the course of a week in 1933 in Poland. And it's a romantic, humorous, serious, historical story about two young people falling in love with the kind of social political backdrop of the time, and ultimately immigrating to the United States to build a new life together. And yeah, we've written a great score, I think. We had a really nice reading of the show in September there that went very well. So we're thrilled to be bringing that to the stage next summer, July, August, down on the Jersey Shore, where it's a great time to be in the summer.
Well,
I'm sorry, and I was just going to say, if you're asking about other projects, I literally just had my new big musical called Charlie Hustle about Pete Rose, about the baseball player Pete Rose, opened outside of Detroit, not too far from where Cary currently lives.
Yeah.
And we had a nice developmental project production of that at a university out there, and looking forward to. I've been in talks now to have a regional premiere of that 25 or 26. So, and people say a musical about Pete Rose, and I say a musical about Alexander Hamilton. So it's all about how it's all about how it's treated. It's actually a wonderful idea. It's very much Greek tragedy about somebody who had it all and lost it all. And even though I say it's not a baseball musical, it's a musical about a famous baseball player who's a gambling addict, and get to explore that as well. And then hopefully we'll have good news about my new musical, My Cousin Vinny, in the next several months about the next steps for that.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations to both of you on what you've done, what you've got upcoming, and during the summer, just before your new show comes in, have you on again to promote it and let people know about it, to come see it again.
Oh, that would be wonderful.
About it. Yeah, and maybe I'll have to. You've already talked up Jersey in the July, so maybe I'll have to make a trip down and check it out live.
Yeah, look, it's worse places to be than the Jersey Shore in Long Branch. You'll get to be on the boardwalk. The New Jersey Rep is 2 minutes from boardwalk. Really? So,
yeah,
I've never been there, so maybe that's going to be a trip. Maybe
it's a nice spot.
Figure it out. Awesome. Well, again, Neil, Cary, thank you so much for coming on today and talking to me and introducing the show to myself and to the listeners. And I look forward to seeing what you guys create in the future. And I'll definitely be following it and promoting it. So congrats.
Thank you so much, John Paul. It was great to be here. Thanks for having us. Great to meet you.
Thank you.
No problem. All right, that was Cary and Neil, the creators of the musical The Sabbath Girl. Make sure you check out that. It's going to come back next year. Find out, watch for that as well. And of course, the Off-Broadway cast recording from Centerstage Records. You can listen to it now, and then next year, buy the CD. How can you not want the physical copy? Buy the CD as well and take a listen to it. Tune in next week as we speak with another guest or guests about their life, love, and passion that is musical theater. I am your host, as always, Jean-Paul Jovanov. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you.